People of Reddit, what's an interesting creepy topic to look into? Go watch the documentary 3 Identical Strangers, a story about triplets who were separated at birth. It starts out wholesome and very quickly becomes dark. Cornflakes. The inventor of cornflakes made it bland and boring so people wouldn't get excited and have sex or masturbate. He also ran a sanitarium, put carbolic acid on little girls' privates so they would never derive pleasure from sex, and put wires on boys' penises so that when they had an erection it would cause them pain, among other things. He believed in some crazy crap. One of Kellogg's heroes was Mr. Graham, known for the graham cracker. He thought tasty food excited the loins and led to sexual thoughts. The original graham cracker was invented to prevent masturbation by tasting so bland. The wife of the leader of the Church of Scientology has not been seen for over 10 years. The higher-ups of the organization claim she is dedicating all her time to the church. But the fact that ever since she got in a big fight with her husband 10 years ago, none of her family members had seen or contacted her indicates foul play. Rumor has it this is why Leah Remini left the church. Cults. It's easy to think you're too smart to fall for brainwashing tactics, but the more you learn, the more you realize that we all have vulnerabilities that can be exploited. Room 1046 is a pretty creepy unsolved case. Basically, an unidentified man was brutally murdered in his hotel room after he had been sat there, alone, in the dark, all day. Throw in some mysterious phone calls and strange behaviors and it's a pretty interesting story. He was identified. Forgot his name but it was epic. But that's really the most the case has to it. A Redditor. When she was young, and her mom were out camping and there were men in a truck nearby. Later that night, she was awoken by her mom in the tent who was sitting up and motioning for her to be quiet. They could hear the men approaching the tent. The mom had a bit of quick thinking and said, "Tommy, grab the gun," aloud. Even though it was just the girl and her mom, the men ended up leaving after hearing that. I can't imagine the horrors they avoided that night. Island School. Basically the school was a pseudo-cult Stanford prison experiment type place disguised as a send-away school for behavior correction. There is a webcomic series by someone who escaped. I'm on break at work, else I'd link it. It's since closed but it went for under the radar for years and years. If I recall correctly, a few people died there from the harsh treatments they were given. I like to go back and read the threads where editors talk about their creepiest moments. From seeing something that shouldn't exist to almost being killed by something super tangible. It's just interesting and creepy to read people's first-hand experiences of fear. Funny how we have the internet and social media to bring in an unprecedented era of interpersonal communication where literally anyone on earth can talk to anyone else, and one of the top things we do with it is tell each other ghost stories. The flashlight may be digital now, but we all still look when the next kid holds it under his chin. Xizong Jiangxi campaign, which was led by the Japanese as a revenge for the Dolittle raid. Here is what Wikipedia says about it. After the raid, the Japanese Imperial Army began the Xizong Jiangxi campaign, also known as Operation Seigo, to prevent these eastern coastal provinces of China from being used again for an attack on Japan and to take revenge on the Chinese people. An area of some 20,000 square miles, 50,000 km2, was laid waste. Like a swarm of locusts, they left behind nothing but destruction and chaos. Eyewitness Father Wendlin Dunker wrote, "The Japanese killed an estimated 10,000 Chinese civilians during their search for Doolittle's men. People who aided the airmen were tortured before they were killed." Father Dunker wrote of the destruction of the town of Iwang. "They shot any man, woman, child, cow, hog, or just about anything that moved. They raped any woman from the ages of 10-65. And before burning the town they thoroughly looted it. None of the humans shot were buried either." The Japanese entered Nancheng, population 50,000, on the 11th of June, beginning a reign of terror so horrendous that missionaries would later dub it the Rape of Nancheng, evoking memories of the infamous Rape of Nancheng 5 years before. Less than a month later, the Japanese forces put what remained of the city to the torch. This planned burning was carried on for 3 days, one Chinese newspaper reported, and the city of Nancheng became charred earth. When Japanese troops moved out of the Xizong and Jiangxi areas in mid-August, they left behind a trail of devastation. Chinese estimates put the civilian death toll at 250,000. The Imperial Japanese Army had also spread cholera, typhoid, plague-infected fleas and dysentery pathogens. The Japanese Biological Warfare Unit 731 brought almost 300 pounds of paratyphoid and anthrax to be left in contaminated food and contaminated wells. With the withdrawal of the army from areas around Yushan, Qinghua and Futzin, around 1,700 Japanese troops died out of a total 10,000 Japanese soldiers who fell ill with disease when their biological weapons attack rebounded on their own forces. Shunroku Hata, the commander of Japanese forces involved of the massacre of the 250,000 Chinese civilians, was sentenced in 1948 in part due to his failure to prevent atrocities. He was given a life sentence but was paroled in 1954. It is only a small part of what war crimes Japanese committed in World War II, but nobody seemed to remember them. He was given a life sentence but was paroled in 1954, like 6 years after being sentences. Gee, nothing wrong there. Issei Segura, wealthy Japanese man kills, fricks, and eats a French woman in France. Gets released after being found legally insane, then makes a career back home in Japan profiting off his crime. He does writing, artwork, and is a celebrity there. Really shows the dark side of Japanese culture. You left out the part where after he was sent back Japan, some Jao producers had him be in one of their pornos where he's a big bad wolf eating Red Riding Hood. At the end of said porno they reveal what his crimes were to the actress and she's completely in shock and shuts down. Cambrian life. At this point in Earth's history 541-485 Maya, most living things look nothing like anything that now exists. There's the Tully Monster, an animal that has paleobiologists in debate over whether it was a vertebrate or not. It's thought to be related to lampreys, Opabinia, which had 5 eyes and looks like a cross between a lobster and a vacuum cleaner, and Anomalocaris, basically a chitinous floating death ship that arrived to eat all the much smaller animals of the time. Last, let's not forget Picala, a little worm-like thing that is our distant ancestor. New discoveries are made all the time, and scientific theories constantly shift to adjust to the existence of the latest mystery creature. They get neglected by the media in favor of dinosaurs, but Cambrian life is just as fantastic. The sheer number of unmarked gravesites along the Oregon Trail. Several friends of mine have found bodies of pioneers in their backyards and property. The bloop, deep sea gigantism, and other deep sea sounds. While many have been debunked, the idea of Godzilla-sized crap running around down there is fun scary. 1. Serial killers. 2. Unsolved missing person cases. 4. Rare genetic disorders. 5. Alien abduction reports. 6. Human medical experimentation. 7. Anything the CIA has declassified. 8. The hum. 9. Spontaneous human combustion. 10. Cases of alleged demonic possession. 11. Rare mental illness. 12. Heat death of the universe. Usually, it'd be declassified documents on serial killers, their activities, and their motives. It fascinates me to know what's going on in the heads of these seemingly deranged nutjobs and why they're committing these atrocities. Read any of the letters Albert Fish wrote to his victims' parents. Human trafficking. It's far more widespread than most people realize, and extends beyond sex trafficking. If more people learned the warning signs that a person is being trafficked, they would be in a position to do something about it. Not creepy, but interesting. D.B. Cooper, the only person to successfully hijack a plane, flee, and never get arrested. The Tunguskar Event. Not really creepy in a traditional sense, but if you imagine that, back then, they had no idea what had occurred, and went on to discover 770 square mi of forest completely flattened with no explicable explanation, I'd be having a couple nightmares certainly. Lost media. The thought of something either existing but lost to the sands of time or something never meant to be is both creepy and terrifying. It feels like it never existed, and yet it did, and due to human error it was never documented or finished. Sometimes we don't know if it even really existed, and yet, lots of it we do know. Remnants through small clips, screenshots, or even just the word of God. But there's a good chance we'll never find them. Might as well try, though. Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka serial killer story in Canada. 3 murders and several rapes. So heartbreaking. One of the girl's mothers locked her out of the house as she missed curfew. Leslie called a friend to see if she could stay over and the friend's mother said no. Paul Bernardo picked her up that night. Carla Homolka gave Paul her little sister as a Christmas gift and ended up killing her with tranquilizers she stole from work. Carla was totally involved in everything, but pretended she was a battered woman and only got 12 years. Also, I love anything about the Zodiac Killer. Super interesting stuff. I've been binging the crap out of criminal psychology. There's plenty of videos of interrogations of some really fricked up people. They're creepy in some ways, some flat out deny it, others explain themselves in completely insane manners and it's so fascinating. The list of people who have died via absentia. Unit 731. The strange case of Eliza Lam. The Tulsa race massacre. What happened to the pioneers on Roanoke Island. Why my mom calls valid points and reasoning back talk. And where my dad went. It's been pretty well established that Eliza Lam was having a mental psychotic break as she was already on medication. She likely was trying to escape from someone who only existed in her mind, opened the water tank, fell in, and drowned. A sad case, but there's been no evidence at all over the years of foul play. The lost Dutchman gold mine. Thousands have searched for it, and those closest to finding it always seem to end up with bullets in them. Some tell stories of a mysterious sniper, or snipers, that has guarded the area for decades. There are theories that the lost mine and the deaths surrounding it are part of a neo-Confederate conspiracy. There's a podcast called Astonishing Legends that did a great series on it. I went down the Luca Magnotta YouTube channel rabbit hole. I don't know how much YouTube has taken down, but it was really freaking creepy. The most disturbing thing I found was conversation in comments between Magnotta and Carla Homolka months before Magnotta murdered John Lynn. Homolka's YouTube channel was typical boomer stuff with a few videos of dogs, and I was able to confirm I was either her or a relative that owned it, even outside the comments. The videos were really creepy and had very few view counts. It gave a feeling of uncomfortable closeness to one of the most disgusting people to ever live. If you can find any of the old accounts and really want to be creeped out, go down this rabbit hole. Less creepy and more ominous. Big quasars, supervolcanoes, anything that can just delete the human race in general, or how absolutely lethal diseases have been, regardless of how much we downplay all but a select few in history classes. The slow and painful death of Amara Sanchez. She was only 13 at the time. Basically in 1985 there was a volcanic eruption in Amara. There was this huge mudslide and it destroyed most of the place. Amara Sanchez got caught up in it. She was stuck in a kneeling position, I believe, under a brick door that was clenched in the arms of a dead person. One source I read said it was her dead aunt. This meant they couldn't pull her out unless they amputated her legs. But with no equipment to prevent the excessive blood loss, they had to let her die humanely. She was stuck in muddy water that was just below her mouth, surrounded by people trying to comfort her as she knows she was going to die. She suffered for 60 hours. Knowing she is going to die, people interviewed her as well. One specific photo became very popular and spread worldwide concern. The thing that makes me uncomfortable about it is that you can easily find the pictures and even hear her voice in the interview. Just knowing that this was when she was in her final moments horrified me. I'm 13-14 now and I can't even imagine how terrified I would be in her situation. Not even drugged to stop the extensive pain. The Roanoke Colony. Elizabeth Bathory. The band Mayhem and the church burnings, murders surrounding 90s Norwegian black metal bands. H.H. Holmes and his Chicago Hotel, Danvers State Hospital, and serial killers before 1900 are a few that come off the top of my head. Roanoke isn't that interesting anymore. I read that researchers concluded that everyone left, died, or intermarried with local indigenous tribes. What is weird, though, is that area's creepy obsession with Virginia Dare. Overton Bridge in Scotland. Dogs are known to jump to their death for inexplicable reasons and they call it the dog suicide bridge. Many pagan Celts believed it was located in a thin place where heaven meets earth. I am pretty sure this is considered solved. It's mink nesting in the area under the bridge. causing long-nosed dogs to bolt at the smell. You should look into the Jameson family, not too creepy but it's confusing. I did a whole project on it for school but it was very interesting to me. Fritz Harmon, Killer and Cannibal, Unit 731, Japan. Killing Fields Red Khmer in Cambodia. 30-year war in Europa. One anecdote. One village near my hometown poisoned theirself unknowingly with a mushroom while eating bread. Not possessed but you trip like on acid. Thought they were possessed by the devil and killed all each other. Black Plague. Killings of the civils by Germans in Russia. Oh my god. I had to do a project on Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge when I was in high school. Some seriously fricked up crap. The cruelty of humans never ceases to amaze me. The crime of Joseph Fritzel and the horrible things that happened to Junko Furuta happened separately, but both were terrible in their own rights. David Paulide's missing 411 cases. He predominantly looks into the phenomenon of unexplained and unusual missing persons cases in the national parks of America and Canada. It's very factual and quietly disturbing. I'm hoping to get hold of his books. Just after the Vietnam War, people all over Chicago or somewhere started dying in their sleep. They all reported having terrible nightmares, some even stating that something was trying to get them in their dreams, and avoided sleeping before their deaths. They all were refugees from the same place, and they were all young men. Autopsies showed no signs of anything health-wise that would have killed them. It was as if they were killed by their nightmares. The weirdest part is that there were legends in their home country about a mythological creature that killed people in their sleep. It's apparently what inspired Nightmare on Elm Street. There's YouTube videos about it. Creepy stuff. Marcus Wesson. The guy thought he was a vampire god and bred an incest family of over 20 grandchildren that were all his direct kids. Water dripping on the tomb of Shah Jahan and Mumtaz, the Taj Mahal. Yet till today no one knows the source of that water. North Sentinel Island. A tribe of people separated from civilization so they probably don't know what's going on in the world. Last podcast on the left has a few episodes I'd recommend. Worst Ways to Die. Compilation of stories about some of the most awful deaths in recorded history. Not for the faint of heart. 911. Actual recordings of 911 calls. Some really sad, scary, and disturbing stuff. Japanese war crimes. I mean, you know what it's about. It's freaked up. Menjul. More of the same. Donner Party. More fascinating and unsettling than truly creepy. But I'm including here because I think it's relevant. And perhaps my favorite series they've done. Mikami Manor. Basically this guy advertises it as an extreme haunted house and promises I think $10,000 to anyone who can make it through. But it's actually just a legal torture chamber. He waterboards, buries people alive, makes them eat feces, among other things. Makes my skin crawl. Forensic Farms. I donated my body to one after I found out I had cancer, but they will put you in a highly trashed area somewhere where animals could eat on you to see how long it takes you to decay or possibly figure out a way to criminal might want to dispose of your body, leave you under a mattress or in the open to see how the season affects you body. Course this is all in an enclosed forensic farm and its science is doing this to you. Quite a lot of SCPs are creepy. Granted, there are some duds but for the most part they all have nightmare fuel that you can read about for hours. For every really great SCP, there are a dozen that are poorly written, lazy, or just rehashes of other works. Still a fun way to kill an afternoon though. I really enjoyed the Dear David story on Twitter. If you like ghost stories, genuinely creeped me out, and there were only a couple parts. The photos toward the end, that made me think it wasn't real but still gave me the heebie-jeebies. Anything about the DC snipers, those guys were out there, but it makes you wonder if a kid should be doing life in jail if he was manipulated like Malvo was. Don't know if this has already been posted yet but the fire that has been burning underground in Centralia, Pennsylvania since 1962. Jellification of the oceans. Because we are fishing too much, the population of jellyfish is rising way too fast and alive in giant swarms killing everything that pass. Operation Paperclip. The deliberate and secret effort to scoop up Nazi scientists at the end of World War II, bring them to the US under new identities through other countries, and put them to work in sensitive positions in government research including NASA and the CIA. Seriously creepy crap. Of course, anything the Dulles brothers did back then was pretty dang creepy. John Foster Dulles has got to be high in the running for worst human of the recent era. The Tamim Shud case. Basically, a man was found washed up on a beach in Australia, with a note in his pocket that just said Tamim Shud. Very creepy. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.